Thank you. I'm Dave Kolpack with the AP. I'm going to set the scene a little bit for you, and I'll let my cohorts fill in a lot of the details. We were in a small observation room with about a 3 foot by 3 foot window. The shades were drawn when we got in there. Then the lights were turned off. We heard that the warden order the shades open, and shortly after that, we could see into the execution chamber. The inmate was strapped to the gurney. He had a white sheet covering him from his feet to about the middle of his chest. He was wearing an orange short-sleeved prison shirt. We could see his left hand, which was strapped down with a leather strap, and shortly after the shade opened, he was making several gestures with his left hand. His lower body remained still pretty much throughout the whole procedure, with the exception of a couple of times when his breathing was labored. It was tough to notice much of an expression on his face. The warden and 2 other corrections officials were in there with him. They read him the process that basically got him to where he was today. And I am going to let after that he was asked to give his last words, and so I will let my cohorts explain his last words and his last breaths.
Yes, he was asked if he had any last words. He said, "Yes, I do." And I would describe his speech as very calm through all of this. I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Ed and Peggy Schaeffer, I forgive you for your anger and hatred towards me. I pray to God that he forgives you for his anger and for your anger and hatred toward me. Thanks to my team. I love you all. Goodbye. Let's go." That's all I have to say. He said goodbye again. At that point, his blinking stopped. He took a couple of deep breaths. At one point, he said something in the middle of those deep breaths that sounded like it might be cis. We weren't really sure what it was, and that was the last that he had to say.
Okay, so I'll kind of go through the motion. So, like people said, he was already strapped in, and they went through the formalities of pronouncing the sentence, went through the last words, which you just heard. And so then that was all around 7:32, and all the speaking was done. It looks like he intentionally closed his eyes and did some normal blinking, and then he started to frequently blink. And then he said something that sounded like cis, definitely a one-syllable word that sounded like cis. And his head, at first he was looking up because that's where the mic was, but then he turned his head to the right, which was away from us, and his arm was out to the left, so we couldn't see his face. He did a big, deep, audible breath, and there was some more labored breathing, and then it got gentle, and that was by 8:33, so I'm sorry, 7:33. So within a minute, all of that breathing was done. By 7:38, I would say he was already pretty pale, but I would say the color in his face and hands became pretty clammy, kind of grayish, whitish, bluish. So, they didn't pronounce the death until 7:39, but it happened very quickly in terms of him stopping breathing. There was no major body movements. Also backtracking, so before he spoke is when he was doing the hand movements, and they were like this, which you would call like a rock on, or like a love symbol. This is the love symbol, I think. And then he went like this, which would be like the hang loose surfing symbol, and he would frequently go between them. It's unclear what he meant by that.
Any questions? Can you repeat the last word, please?
What I have, he was asked, "Do you have anything to say?" He said, "Yes, I do." Ed and Peggy Schaeffer, I forgive you for your anger and hatred towards me. I pray to God that he forgives you for your anger and hatred towards me. Thanks to my team. I love you all. Goodbye. Let's go. That's all I have to say. He said goodbye again, and then that, what was sis or something like that.
I actually have a few more details. So he had the orange short sleeve shirt, like people said. His left hand stretched out with a brown leather strap. He had one clear tube running from that, but into the wall where the person administering the drugs were, there were 4 tubes, 2 blue, 2 clear. Like I said, he was pretty pale. He had his large glasses on, a light gray mustache, darker gray hair. And you couldn't, I mean, and totally covered with, on top of a white sheet and then covered mostly with that white sheet, with another white sheet.
Can you tell me about the timeline between him being administered and when he was declared dead? Was there any physical reaction shown or anything like that?
Just all that detail that I described, that happened within a minute.
Okay, so it was within a minute.
Yeah, like, yes, like 7:32 is when he was done saying his last words, and by 7:33 he had done all of that, the blinking and breathing I was talking about.
I would just add, this is the 3rd execution I've covered, and really in terms of issues with his breathing or any other kind of physical issues, this was probably the quickest and most uneventful in terms of that part of it. The last execution I witnessed, the inmate let out a groan after he had been injected, and the one before that actually snored for about 8-10 minutes, and none of that happened. It was pretty quiet for the most part.
So when it was administered, he didn't make any noise or anything then?
Well, it was what I said. I can go over it again if you want. After he was done speaking, that's when it looks like he purposely closed his eyes, did some normal blinking, then did the frequent blinking, said sis at some point. His head went to the right. He did a big, deep, audible breath, and then some labored breathing, and then gentle breathing, and then it was done. So we heard breathing noises, but no groaning, no grunting.
He was pretty calm most of the time?
Yes, he seemed completely calm, I would say, throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I would describe it as like his words were like calm and intentional, like maybe he had practiced or...
But he told others that he forgave them. He never said he was sorry.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and he clearly said their first names. It wasn't just Schaeffer's, it was their first names too, Ed and Peggy.
Do we know, Michael, if there was any struggle walking to the execution chamber? We don't know that.
Was there any indication of the last minute appeals or anything like that during, I don't know, looking at the clock or anything like that?
No.
Any other questions for the media witnesses?
So about how long were you actually in the room?
You got a timeline?
I have that we were brought up at 7:26, like from the downstairs room. And then, like then we walked upstairs were in the room, the lights were off. We opened our side of the blinds. You could see the light through. Then they opened their sides of the blinds, then we could see in.